We are back on the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Thanks for joining us. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Charlotte Laffer made her way to the top of the corporate ladder, and when she got there, she looked down, and what did she see? Well, it's kind of funny, and you can read all about it in the Laffer Chronicles Life Off the Wall. How you doing, Charlotte? So your journey begins. You're a single mom, left to fend for yourself and your young daughter, and you take a temp job.
Yeah, so the book is kind of a parody about like the amusing parts of corporate America if you can choose to be amused instead of annoyed. And sometimes it's a very challenging choice, right? But I try to look at everything as humorously as possible, take things to their most ridiculous level. And sometimes it's not too far of a stretch because that can be your day-to-day. Right. So the book is just, a lot of what the journey is and some hilarious side journeys, I guess, along the way, while trying to get your day-to-day accomplished and stay within the guidelines of the many, many, many rules that they set up for you.
So many rules. And who sets up those rules? Is Charlotte the lone woman in a sea of men who are making rules just to make themselves feel good, look big, like big men, like powerful?
That's definitely part of it. And that's probably the hardest part to find amusing, to be honest. Right. But in the banking industry, the corporation itself is regulated by the Fed. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of AML, KYC laws. And then, a lot of it is, men over-speaking you. I made a joke with a woman that I work with on a call one time. It's like, do you have a blowhorn? Like, this is getting really annoying. And sometimes it's easier to just let them speak or go down the road they want to go down and then, point out the fallacies when they come up because, unless you jump up and down, and sometimes not even then, you're not going to be heard.
So give me an example.
So there's a situation with another team where they are supposed to be reviewing information for accuracy, and they actually detour into punctuation. And this is arguable punctuation. This isn't like normal set in stone grammar rules, right? Like put periods after U and S and A in the abbreviation of USA. And then, that gets kicked back as an error. And then Charlotte kind of has to stand up for her team and be like, listen, like this is not wrong. This is not going to impact anything. This is not going to bring the financial market to its knees if we say, USA altogether instead of ... So this is the kind of feedback I don't want to get. I don't want my team to have to deal with. And I expect that it'll stop.
How did Charlotte rise from temp to what?
Charlotte runs a team of trade processors that started out with 6, basically, when she was in charge, and ended up, I think at the end of the book, ended up with around 22 or 3, just by being smart, staying sharp, caring, having a lot of passion about what she does. Was hired from a temp to be a full-time employee and then promoted to be a supervisor and then a manager just by, like I said, being sharp and caring about the team and the clients like they were her own. A little bit of entrepreneurialism, against the backdrop of giant corporations.
It sounds like the Laffer Chronicles has more than one book.
It will, right? So the first one's called Life Off the Wall, which is a direct reflection of Wall Street, right? Charlotte doesn't work on Wall Street, but is enough connected so that, it's a relatable term to use. And then the second book is going to be Back Against the Wall. And that's going to take Charlotte on her next adventure, navigating corporate America. Just a little older now, a little savvier, a little more of an ass kicker, if that's even possible. And then just, finding her way through whatever channels she needs to navigate to keep everything afloat until she can retire.
Is it still such a rarity for women to have this kind of power?
No, it's getting better, but there's also a dynamic too with women in charge, right? Um, a lot of women who have authority in corporate America are not very nice people. They don't come across well. They don't really ease into it. It's like they have to try harder, right? Like you have to be mean and awful to have your voice heard. And sometimes I don't like to admit it, but sometimes I do stoop to that. Um, but for the most part, if a woman in corporate America tried to communicate like a man does, um, she wouldn't get anywhere. Nobody would pay any attention.
So, yeah, she'd be a whiny bitch, correct?
Yeah. I mean, better is a relative term and refers to numbers only, right? Like when we were first taken over in 2010, I looked at the reporting structure, and the people in charge were 3 Italian men.
Oh, great.
It was my boss 2 levels up and reporting to him 3 Italian men. And I'm like, okay, I know how this is going to unfold. So it's a little more diverse than that now. But, there's still, of course, the prejudices and the boys club, and that's so deeply ingrained. It's going to take a lot, like maybe generational input and influence to, change that up a little bit. I don't think it's going to happen during my career.
Give me a funny situation that happens real quick.
It's definitely interviewing people to join the team. Because when you interview a bunch of people, you come up with a bunch of different stuff. At least I did. I never would have guessed or could have imagined people would come up with. There's a woman in there that was like having an allergy attack or came to her interview with the flu and was full on like snot slinging all over a conference room table, like, dumping tissues and just, trying to shake hands until finally, Charlotte was like, listen, when you feel better, we'll have this conversation again. Right. There was a guy that ordered carryout to be brought into the interview room while he was interviewing. So, it's like, oh, everybody liked Chinese, like he lived there and this was like his gift to his interviewers.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then some of the some people that you ask, they say some amazing things in their accomplishments. I had one in particular, it's like, oh, this is impressive. Tell me how you did this. And what I got was a blank stare.
So they didn't do it.
Right. And I led because I used to be more naive than I am now. I was thinking, oh, this person's nervous. Right. So it's like, okay, well, I'm looking at your objective here and it says this, I'd like to take a deeper dive into that. And she just kind of started shaking her head.
Oh,
no,
man.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. I had one person when I asked them how they dealt with difficult interactions with clients, they told me that they try to make sure that they put the phone down before they start screaming. Yeah. So it's been an interesting journey to say the least. Yeah, those are some of the funniest things that are in the first book. Those are the ones that make me laugh again, even though I've written this and read this and reread and proofed and read some, book iterations, and that part still cracks me up.
Did you need to write this?
I think so.
Did it help?
Yeah, it definitely, it's a little bit of both, right? There's a part of me that should disconnect from my everyday and needs to, when I'm done working, stop thinking about it. And there's also a part of me that does need to exercise it. So, when those things are perfectly in line, sometimes there's times when I don't work on it because, sometimes this environment gets toxic and suffocating. And sometimes I can see writing as a way through. And sometimes I just don't want to focus on work at all.
Yeah, it's just too much. You need to just let it go.
Yeah.
I would think other women in the corporate world would love this book.
I would hope so. Yeah.
And, and people that have no idea what's really going on there.
Right. Yeah. And some of the subtleties that you might miss if you're, not involved in the struggle. Like my boss is very supportive, but also sometimes super clueless. Some of the gender stuff that comes up and, you just, it's not going to register.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't understand that. It's like, of course you don't. It's not your struggle. So.
All right, so you are Charlotte Laffer,
Yes.
author of the Laffer Chronicles, Life Off the Wall, the first in a series.
Yes.
Thanks so much for talking to me.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.
A retired RN and nursing professor, Heather B., started writing her book, Living on the Edge of a Scalpel, in 2010. Then she didn't write again until 2022. And therein lies your story, doesn't it, Heather?
I basically got hit with a whole lot of health issues and family deaths, and I just became depressed. Well, according to my doctor, it wasn't clinical depression, but I went into situational depression, and I just lost the motivation, the will to do anything, which at that time was writing, and I just, So I put on the pen and the paper and stopped writing from 2010 until 2022 when I said no. One thing I know about myself, I believe in follow through. If I start something, I must finish it. So 2022, that came back to me that, this is not like me to stop something and not complete it. So I got behind the computer and I typed the last 6 chapters in the space of 2 months.
Is this book about your career?
It is my life story, is my memoir, basically how I have had multiple surgical procedures, multiple things that required a scalpel.
What are your issues?
Sickle cell anemia.
Oh.
That's what I was born with. So it was basically, up until 2015, it was basically my life story, living with sickle cell anemia disease and all the things I had to overcome.
I don't think people understand what it's like dealing with sickle cell anemia.
They don't. Sickle cell anemia is a genetic disorder that I was born with. My parents at the time, when they got married in the 60s in Jamaica, there were no requirements for testing prior to marriage, neither testing at birth or prior to birth. And my parents found out that they were both carriers of sickle cell anemia when I first got sick at the age of 3. Sickle cell basically causes intense pain. It is equivalent to having a heart attack, except it's usually in our joints or in our abdomen or head. Various body parts loses its blood supply, loses its oxygen supply, and the area around it dies, basically. So the book is about how I had to adapt to living the life of a sick person in a society that really does not understand or appreciate the difficulties that sick people have to.
But you managed to continue working as a nurse and teaching other nurses despite all of this?
I actually defied my doctor. I was never supposed to get into healthcare because working in healthcare would put me on the front line of getting infections and getting other health issues that were contagious. And he actually told me not to become a nurse because I would be endangering my health and by extension endangering my life.
Right.
But healthcare was the only thing I wanted to do. Initially, I wanted to be a doctor, a physician, a pediatrician. Then I found out about all the extensive hours they had to be on call during residency because my brother had already started medical school, so I knew the backstory of what he was enduring. So I realized, okay, physically I could not become a physician. So then I thought, well, I want to be an RN. And I discussed it with my doctor, and he said, absolutely no. But I couldn't figure out anything else that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, so I went to nursing school. And I learned the hard way because, yes, I did get sick much more frequently. But God was good. My faith kept me. And I was able to work when I could. Because I was married at that time, I worked per diem. And then when I started teaching, I worked in a school setting which was not as hectic on my body or not as stressful on my body as bedside nursing. So
Yeah.
I managed to work and go through.
Is that what your book's about? Following your calling?
It kind of sort of would morph into that because a part of my target audience is for fellow sufferers of sickle cell anemia. A lot of them are leery of pushing the limit and pursuing, higher educational goals. And this was my way of trying to encourage them that, yes, you can do it. Yes, you are going to encounter multiple obstacles and many health issues because of doing it, but you can achieve more than what we were led to believe were our limitations.
Did you have to take special precautions? Did you have to always wear a mask, gloves to protect yourself?
Well, not so much as far as protective equipment, but more so as far as keeping warm, hydrating, getting rest, because being on my feet for multiple hours, that can trigger a crisis. Being cold can trigger a crisis. Being at bedside and not being able to go take water breaks frequently, that also increased my, possibility of going into a crisis and then basically be admitted with the patient I was previously taking care of. So many nights I would be taking care of patients. I go into crisis. They take me down to the ER. The ER admits me. And then I end up being the roommate of a patient. I was previously her nurse, like hours before.
Is there a particular situation that stands out in your book or a time?
A particular situation for me was when sickle cell caused me to lose my twins. I'm a person of faith, and the loss of my twins, it shattered my faith. It really unmoored me. It was psychologically harmful, and I had to take a lot of time to work through that and figure out, whether I still believed in a God, a loving Father. And at the end, I was able to look back and say, yeah, God does exist. He is a loving Father. And maybe I won't know why I lost my kids until he comes and I go to heaven and find out.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I had one child, and he was 5 at the time, and I really, really wanted to give him a sibling. But the sibling that he prayed for, and I was finally impregnated and looking forward to having these babies, I actually lost them.
Yeah. It's interesting you write that the words of Maya Angelou resonate with you.
Yes.
And they are, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. So you kept going.
I did. It's a reflection. And as I said, it's also it's written as an encouragement for the 9-year-old me. In the book, I shared that I got my very first book on sickle cell at 9. It was more, looking back now, I'm realizing that the book was really geared for perhaps doctors or a more mature audience. The book literally scared me speechless. I had been dealing with this disease from I was 3 years old. And at 9, I don't know who it was that bought me the book, but someone gave me the book. I read the book cover to cover, and it was just like, wow, what in the world do I have? It said that I was going to die before I turned 20. And I'm like, oh my God, really? So it is for that 9-year-old child that was told all that she could not expect to experience in life because she was going to be dead before she's 20. I wanted to write to that person, for that person to know whether the person had sickle cell or any terminal illness. I wanted that person to know that there is a future. You can experience joy in life, and unfortunately, it may be a modified life, but it can be achieved. And for them to stick to their dreams and chase them. Don't give up. Don't curl up and die before you die. As I've told my dad before he died, he would complain of multiple health issues. And I'd say, Daddy, you have to keep living until you die. And I know it may sound very simplistic, but that is what I had to do in my life. I had to realize that once air continued coming in and out of my lung, once blood continued pulsating through my body, once I was alive, I was expected to do something with that. I was not expected to lay in bed and give up my resolve and say, oh, well, I'm going to die, so let me just die. Doesn't work that way. So the book was written as a motivation for others who are thinking that life is over. All I'm doing now is waiting for death.
How are you finding the people that need to read this book?
I have been finding them mainly online through social media, whether through writers groups or through various organizations that deal with people with sickle cell or people with lupus, people who are dealing with health challenges. And my contacts are primarily online. I actually got the book authorized to be in the library system. And so between the library, between social media, and my church, I'm getting the book exposed.
Good for you, Heather. Good for you.
Thank you.
Are you going to keep writing?
Yes, I hope to. I already started. It's a 7-part children's health/medical book. So I'm aiming to write the child's version of living with sickle cell, of lupus, of various health conditions, but write it from the standpoint of someone who has lived that life as a child and how they can continue living with whatever ailment they're dealing with. I'm writing it from both a patient and a professional's health standpoint.
Great. It really sounds like you have a purpose here.
I think so. I spent many years wondering what is my purpose here, but I'm beginning to hear that more and more often. I think at last count, Amazon had 18 or 19 5-star reviews, and these are people I don't know, but they're saying that, my journey has been inspirational. It has helped them to be able to hang in there, to overcome. And reading their testimonials about the book, I'm realizing that maybe that's why I'm here.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm supposed to inspire, motivate, and help lift my fellow brother or sister up.
Great. You are Heather B., author of Living on the Edge of a Scalpel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alice.
When Trisha Warren's husband did the unthinkable, she would not let it destroy her. It made her stronger and paved the way for a new chapter in her life that includes a podcast and her first published book entitled The First 24 Hours, What to Do When You Find Out Your Spouse Has Had an Affair. Now, as fate would have it, you did some writing for a minister who wrote books that you were working for.
I was a ghostwriter for him. So obviously I'm linguistic. So that's kind of always been a draw for me. Never thought I'd be writing my own. I just thought I'd be doing it for somebody else. And then God really spoke to me and just said, I want you to write about my husband had an affair. And so I didn't know where to go. And all these books that I read were super huge and they were not helpful at all. Like I needed a resource, basically. Like, tell me what step by step what to do. I'm very like, I need steps. And so I did that. I just wrote the book, basically steps for people to take who are in that situation so that they kind of, and it's fast, like it's a fast read. Because when you're dealing with that, you don't need, like, you don't have time on your hands. Like, you need to have some fast solutions. And so that's kind of where my heart was when I wrote the book.
Well, it's the first 24 hours, so...
Well, it's really like basically what you do first. This is kind of like, because a lot of people, they think, well, I'll just keep them in the house. I'll try to make them as happy as can be. I'm desperate to keep them. And that's really what pushes them away, because they're thinking in their mind, they want to be free from you. So you need to let them go. You need to let them see what the reality really is to be without you. And you need to push for it quickly so that they either snap out of it and your marriage can be restored, or you can know for sure you just need to move on, because that's hell, hell on earth.
What was your situation? What happened?
I was a stay-at-home mom at the time. My husband was actually in the ministry. And so it's a very horrible situation because there were a lot of people involved, a lot of ripple effect. And but I was young. I was 27, but thank God my parents really loved me. And so I had a good head on my shoulders and I knew who I was. And so I just, by the grace of God, just got a job, put my son in daycare, started working, and pulled myself out of that.
Do you just end the marriage? Is that what the answer is?
No, I don't think so. I think, if I, like I said, with this book, the reason I wrote it was to give people resources, because what I did was I stayed in a really toxic relationship for years and he was never coming home, but he just was, because we were, when you're a pastor, you have this perception to keep. So he was just doing the perceptions. He was like saying what needed to be said, doing what needed to be done in his mind. And so I'm thinking this whole time, okay, he wants restoration. He doesn't want restoration. And that's why I think it's so important. Like, that's what I say, the first 24 hours, because you need to make some immediate steps. Like, I talk about in the book, you need to go ahead and tell them you need to go. You don't need to stay here. If you've got something on the side, you need to go. And then you go ahead and see an attorney, because a lot of people are so naive that, and then their resources are drained. They're going through this horrible roller coaster of emotions. You need to get them out so that you can have peace in your home, and then let them figure out what they're going to do. And a lot of times I believe if I would have done things differently, I would have had resolve a lot sooner than I did. But I went through this roller coaster of 2 years of, yes, I want restoration. And then he really didn't the whole time. It was just a game. And so I don't think that all of the marriages that have an affair end a result can have to go through divorce, but you can find it out quickly if you'll just take the steps that I discussed in the book.
And probably the hardest thing to do is say you have to go.
Yeah, for sure. And change the locks on the doors so that they can't come and go. You set up guidelines for them to see the children, like you don't keep the children from them, but you set up some solid boundaries so that they understand what it's going to look like without us, without this marriage situation and our children together. Like, this is what you've decided to do. So go ahead and put the thing in motion. Go ahead and see your attorney, find out, how to protect your finances, how to protect, the things that you've built together, but you don't want them to liquidate your finances and, or take everything and you're just left with nothing, It's really, you can't be naive in that situation. And I think a lot of times the victim is the one that's like, they're so caught off guard and so in their emotions that they're not thinking straight. You don't have time to not think straight in that kind of situation. And in that book, I kind of try to, like, in a gentle way, snap people into reality, because that's what I needed somebody to tell me. Like, you don't sit there and you're not a doormat. You don't lay under somebody, basically violating and breaking every covenant in the marriage and then doing their own thing. And then you're just like, well, I'll be here if you change your mind. That's crazy. You take the reins. And that's what I did. I said, okay, you need to go, and if it gets volatile, you may have to get the police involved and things like that. I mean, because people get really crazy. And that's what I'm saying in this book. What I tell people is you have to be so facts based, because people get so, I mean, I've talked to women who have, the other woman is taunting them in public.
Oh, no.
They've gotten in fist fights because it's so, you have to keep your wherewithal. And that's why it's so important in my heart and in my mind to have a relationship with God, because I knew how to channel what I was feeling. I knew to take what I was dealing with, and I channeled everything through, like, really reading the word. And I had a lot of direction by the Holy Spirit. See, when you're trying to do this by yourself, you don't know what to do. But I would turn to God and I would say, okay, show me what to do. And he showed me financially steps to take, because I was, like I said, I was 27 years old and I had a 1-year-old son. And so you better bet, like, I was nowhere near my family. I didn't even tell them initially. So I was with his family, his church, his people. I felt so alone. But in and of myself, I knew who had me. I knew that God was going to show me what to do. And he did. He showed me step by step, day by day, like things that I was way beyond my scope, showed me what to do. And that's what I really teach people in that book. If you think that you're going to be able to do this by yourself with all of these emotions, all of this, cortisol running through it's like fight or flight every day for, it felt like forever, honestly. But, in that kind of situation, what you're talking about with a woman who is making all the money, you take charge. You tell them, okay, this is how this goes from now on. And if they don't comply, you get an attorney. You have to do things lawfully. You have to do things by the book. You can't just be in your feelings and, doing stupid stuff. No, you have to because especially if you have kids involved, please don't be stupid. Like, you have to, you can make it hell for your children. And I refused. I was like, this is not going to be how this goes. He may be choosing to live however he wants to, but that's not going to determine how I choose what I do with my emotions, with my feelings, with my life. I'm not going to go to hell and let my life fall apart just because this person decided that they wanted to be with somebody else instead of me. It's like, you have to really be so facts-based, get out of your feels, and be a boss. You have to think like an executive in a company. You don't let somebody come in and destroy your company just because they want to take you down. No, that's not how this is going to go. I'm the boss and I'm going to run this thing.
So your marriage did not work out, clearly.
No, ma'am.
But that's not to say all marriages can't work out.
That's right. I believe that, and maybe if I had done things differently, who knows, but.
I mean, what made you come to that conclusion after what you went through?
Because I had a friend that went through something similar after me, and I told her exactly what to do, and her marriage was restored. So I knew, if I would have not been a doormat and let him just stay in the house and, be with this girl while I was still in the, it was just so horrible the way that I did things. I just let him initially stay in my home and and he said he wasn't seeing her, but in your heart, And so I told her, I said, get an attorney, tell him to get out, start pursuing divorce, do the things that I talk about in the book, and her marriage was restored. So I don't think that all marriages have to end that way, honestly.
So this would be a great resource for women in the situation.
Or men.
How do you find them?
My podcast I have a YouTube podcast.
Okay.
And I also have a Facebook page. I have Instagram. I have TikTok. But I have an author page through Instagram, and I also have an author page. So my book actually has the links to all my podcasts and, all the resources. And so I just want to help people, honestly. That's why I have the podcast and have the book. And I've already written another book, getting it published.
Is your next book a continuation of the same theme?
This one's on forgiveness.
Have you forgiven your first husband?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we don't have any kind of relationship because my son's an adult. So I don't have to talk to him or anything, but yeah, I mean, I pray for him. I want him to have a successful life. I, still care about him. I don't want his life to be bad, but, I'm just really thankful that I was able to move forward, have a good life now. And that's why I wrote the book too. I think you need to hear from people who have a success story, that have gotten over it and their life is good. I just have a hard time with reading resources from people that have never even experienced that. Like, how can you tell somebody what to do when you've never even known how that feels or what that looks like,
All right. Trisha Warren, author of The First 24 Hours, What to Do When You Find Out Your Spouse Has Had an Affair. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Thanks, Alice.
Dominick Catterson is a disabled vet. He served as a Marine from 2012 to 2017 when he fell off a ladder while working on a C-130 airplane wing. He's been writing ever since. The name of his book, Dane Holly, Lionheart. Tell us the role that writing plays in your life.
It was right around for my first surgery, back surgery. And then after surgery, I really took it on because I was, struggling mentally. And I was like, well, I'll just start writing about stuff. And, then I got an idea and I was like, I could probably turn this into a story and just kind of make it here and there. And then 147 pages later, I had a story.
Did it help ease your mind?
To a degree. There were a couple chapters in there that were really difficult to get through, I would say. A lot of it's all made up really, but the emotion behind each event is very real. So the pain and, a lot of other things in there are real. So I didn't want to actually put my own events in there because those are hard to talk about, but
right.
The emotion is in there. So that's kind of how it went.
Well, tell me about Dane Holly.
Well, it's just, it's loosely based on Norse culture, I guess would say, kind of like that region, like Iceland, Norse, all that stuff. It's basically kind of similar to myself, really. He's really struggling with mental images and mental health and, past memories and things like that. And, then by chance, one night, Norden, who is kind of the watcher of Nordiak, sends him out on a quest. What he seems would be a simple quest turns into a full-on war to kind of save the world, in that sense.
So he's sent out to retrieve the legendary heart of Avalonia, a gem of immense power and significance.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then there's shadowy forces gathering and ancient evil stirs, and this simple task turns into him confronting danger, threatening Nordiak, and it hits something inside of him as well.
Yeah, so I mean, it starts out to retrieve the gem, the Heart of Avalonia there. He hits a couple different places. He runs into a king who's banished, really. It actually turns out to be an evil regent type. I mean, he gets banished, but he actually I guess a simple term would be like assistant to another king, basically, an infiltrator of the kingdom, because he steals the Heart of Avalonia, brings it back to Avalonia. And, Dane gets caught up in all this mess, and then he has to fight what you call Draugrs, which is like the undead. He fights them. He comes across another wizard, and he goes on to Brundlin to confront the king and tells the king all this news. And then they go to war, basically, because King Beirut forms a evil army in the north. He marches south to Brundlin, and then during that battle, Dane confronts a past that he's been running from for a long time, and then ends up facing it, defeating it, and going home to live a happy life for now.
For now. So there's more to this.
There's another book. He goes home back to Bunkerton. He, moves on with his life. He thinks everything's hunky-dory, per se.
You say that the book proves sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought from within. What's going on inside of him? What happened?
There's an event in there that you'll find out that, he basically blames himself for something he couldn't avoid. And it's a major loss, personally. And it's something that a lot of soldiers and Marines face when they're deployed into combat. Things that happen that they just couldn't avoid, but they carry with them and blame themselves for years on end. And sometimes they just can't get past it. So there's just, towards the end there, you'll find out. It's a little deep there if you really read into it and you find the emotion. I tried my best to really portray it, but it is my first book, so I don't know exactly if I did the best job, but I plan on doing better next round.
Okay. Are you talking about your book?
Yes, ma'am. A lot of it is social media now, and try to get into a library, try to get into a store, try to get somewhere to just kind of push this out the door.
What about veterans groups?
Well, I'm a member of the DAV, which is the Disabled American Veterans. So I plan on going there. Also, there's an American Legion around. So,
showing veterans that they can deal with their emotions and, whatever feelings they're having through writing is I would think a really valuable message.
Yeah, it is. I got it from a therapist. I never thought about actually doing it. I just always done the talking method, which wasn't really working. There was stuff that, every time I tried to talk about it, I just break down.
Right.
But when I'm writing, it's very private, and then I can actually work through it and come back to it and do that. And, and she just said, keep doing it. And then I kept doing it, and it just developed into a story, and started really enjoying it, and I started this book. I started book number 2 for this story. I also have a couple other books that I've been fooling around with, trying to get going. They're not really related to Dane Holly. They're different stories, but yeah, it just started going.
That's great. I'm happy for you. I'm glad you found that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes a big difference when you can deal with those emotions.
Yeah, it's a lot to carry. So you got to get it out.
I can only imagine. You are Dominick Catterson, author of Dane Holly, Lionheart. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I really appreciate this. I hope you have a great day.
Ever been to American Samoa? Well, we're going to go there right now via Zoom, where Professor Lynn Holmquist Holden has been living for 10 years. Originally from Rhode Island, Professor Holden has done so many things, including NYU professor, developer with Apple Technology Group, and he's an Egyptologist, which brings us to his book, Discovering the Wonders of Ancient Egypt. Professor, where do we begin?
The story of my life is called The 9 Lives of Lynn Holden. This is my 9th life. And I had 8 other very interesting lives at various times. One of them as an Egyptologist, a couple of them as environmentalist and peace activist.
Then you've written before.
Yes.
How
I've
many
written 10 books in the last 10 years. So generally, my books are between 1 and 300 pages, although I write in a large font, 14 point, and they're loosely written more like a video script than they're not in English prose. And I always have trouble with this, people, because when you look into my stories, I don't use regular punctuation. I use 3 little dots to show that every sentence and idea is connected to another one. There's no beginning straight line. And the way the Egyptians approached ideas and communication. And I'm a visual designer. I'm an artist. So my work here now, I live as what they call a tusitala, a storyteller. And I'm a kahuna down here because I have a PhD from Yale University.
Tell me about your book.
Well, I came out here when I was going on 65, the age of retirement, and I'm in a better mental and physical space now than I was 10 years ago when I came out here, because this is such a beautiful place full of really nice people. The culture here is the way American culture was. Well, I'm a white person. In the 1950s in Rhode Island, where everybody knows everybody else, neighbors know each other, somebody has a problem, everybody drops everything to help out. And on the weekend, parents take their kids to the beach to have fun. They're not working overtime and trying to remember passwords, and that kind of stuff. So it's really remarkable. And it's actually a lot like what ancient Egyptian society and culture was like. So I worked as an Egyptologist and as a museum artist. So I was teaching art and archaeology of Egypt, but in a museum context with young people hands-on. Okay. So for 10 years before I came out here, I'd been thinking about, I want to write a book to share what I call the heart essence of Egyptian culture and spirituality. And when you show a pyramid, Tut's mask, or a mummy, everybody, my friends at Apple Computer, they said, everybody is interested. My books are about sharing the deep level of spirituality and cultural genius that the ancient Egyptians developed in their art forms and used art to pass it on from one generation to the next, whether it was in a domestic home, in the palace of the king, in the temples where a grandfather would take a grandson or daughter in, and the visual images on the wall told them what their culture was and what was important, and you didn't need to be literate.
Okay.
Words were not required. If you could read, there was another level, the higher level. If you were highly trained, like a priest or a teacher, and all teachers were priests, then there was a third level, the highest, deepest level, which we think of as alchemy. Alchemy is the secret magic of the ancient Egyptian.
Why do you spell it the way you do?
Egyptians had no CH. The Egyptian word for Egypt was Kemet, K-E-M, well, the E. They didn't use, like Hebrew and Aramaic, they didn't use the vowels. K-M-T, Kemet, the Black Land. In my books, I try to get to the source of the creativity of the light of ancient Egypt in a way it can be enjoyed by a 14-year-old American.
It seems the story is about a young person.
I make a description of the ancient environment, and pardon my hubris, but in a better way than it has ever been done because of having been an archaeologist and an anthropologist. So you have a better description of what their environment was like, a domestic house, a temple, a palace, or a tomb, a cemetery. And a young boy or girl is there with their father or mother. And they, the protagonist, have the perspective and curiosity of a modern Western person, a modern American. And they follow their parents around. In the first case of mine, the man is the son of a guy who's an architect, but architects were the heart of alchemy, so Imhotep in Egypt was like Leonardo da Vinci, and he was not just an architect, he was a polymath. So my young boy, Neferbauta, and Neferbauta in the stories is my avatar in ancient Egypt. Okay. So as I was working on the art forms in the Boston Museum, I was imagining being there with them because I'm an artist first and I have an imagination. And even today, at the age of 74, I can remember being 8 years old, discovering things for the first time. And in my books, the young person follows the parents and sees extraordinary things happening in front of them. And they can ask their father or mother or a priest or someone, someone important, what's going on here, with the curiosity of a modern view. And that person tells them in the full symbolic terms of ancient Egyptian, but plain, simple language of what were the things that were important. And then when the young person's gone through my stories, I give them, I call it a spiritual compass, a compass of creativity, 8 points from that ancient culture that were behind the genius that they can bring into their life in the modern world and wake up the next day and say, what that guy or girl was doing in ancient Egypt, I could try that here. The one about the Library of Alexandria and Queen Cleopatra, the young girl, she takes what she learns in the library and she goes back to her family and goes out to look at a procession or goes to some symbolic ritual and says, oh, I'm going to do what the librarian, the woman Hypatia, has been teaching me to do and educate myself. So it's about the creativity of self-transformation that anybody over 8 years old has within them the seeds of alchemy and they can do it. But it's a story, it's a mystery about the magic of creativity that you discover by looking into and opening your own heart in spiritual terms. I have 3 more volumes. This one is a trilogy where it has the wisdom of the Sphinx, the one about the young woman in the Alexandria Library, and the secret of the sacred mountain, which is really about Black Life Matters. I wrote the sacred mountain of Kush at the time when George Floyd was murdered and there were all those things going on in America.
Right. So there are 3 separate stories in this book, right? Give me the titles.
First one is Wisdom of the Sphinx. It's about the magic of the spirituality behind the Sphinx at the time of building the Great Pyramid. So it's Old Kingdom. Second story is called For Love of the Goddess. It's about the spirituality of the goddess Isis. And the goddess Isis at the time of Jesus Christ was the largest faith cult in the Roman Empire. And all the stuff about Mary, the mother, and Mary, the mother with the baby Jesus on her lap comes from the cult of Isis in Egypt. As the people who were reading early Christianity all went from Greece and Rome to Egypt for their initiation into the ancient mysteries. In my stories, I give the key to understanding the nature of the ancient mysteries. And then the third one is the Sacred Mountain, set in Black Nubia, showing how so-called primitive, African peoples conquered Egypt at a moment of weakness, copied Egypt, and made something even greater that they based at their Sacred Mountain. Really extraordinary stuff that nobody knows anything about. The third story is only like 120 pages or something. You can read it in 4 or 5 hours because they're loose pages. So, but the spiritual depths that I drop into here and there, not everywhere, are things that you want to read over and over again and do some self-reflection and meditation on, even if you're only a 12 or 14-year-old young person.
All right. And you will continue to write.
And yes, I'm working on 2 stories right now. And one of them, and these are educational fiction. So one of them is another approach to alchemy, by an amazing character that young people are fascinated with right now called Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great Hermes. It comes out of the Egyptian god Thought.
Okay.
The other one that I'm working on at the same time from some of the same ideas is called Hope 2026. And it's a counterpoint to Project 2025. All the stuff that's destroying American civilization and culture. If we don't have culture and civilization, we're just creatures in a jungle, eating or being eaten, killing or being killed. That's not what America was created to be. The point of my books is for anybody reading them to be able to look up and find a star, a guiding star that comes out of their heart and soul that causes them to create a new compass to find their way forward, doing 8 different things at the same time towards a better future. And that better future is not just for me. It's for all of us together.
Nice thought to leave us with, Professor Lynn Holmquist Holden, author of Discovering the Wonders of Ancient Egypt. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your time.
Ryan Knight has been writing books since he was a teenager. 17 years later, he decided to get one published. The name of his book, Stories of the Miniplex. So how old were you when you started writing?
I started writing when I was 14 years old. I wrote well over a dozen novels over a span of 3 years. And then I switched to fan fiction for about 2 years, and then it went on hiatus. Last year, I got one of my, what I thought would be as my 3 strongest completed manuscripts published. And then I returned to writing in comic scripts for now. And then after, probably around summer, would write a sequel to the Miniplex.
What Stories of the Miniplex about?
It's about a young man in the UK entering the workforce. His first job as a substitute everything at an eccentric movie theater that has deals with significant competition from another movie theater. It's 25 chapters. It's kind of structured like a sitcom. It's a distinct cast of characters, and there's always something going on. It's every all kinds of events. All the 25 chapters. I kind of sort of wrote it as five chapter acts.
Okay, so it's Gabriel.
Yeah, Gabriel Sub. Yeah,
and the movie theater is eccentric.
Well, for example, there's one chapter where there's a bunch of bugs that get loose that are the size of, they got 300 million years ago. The skies that they were during the Carboniferous era.
And they got loose in the movie theater.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Did they attack people?
Yeah.
What happened?
They, the staff had to kind of wrangle them.
How big were they? Like the size of people?
Yeah, roughly that. And there's and the rival movie theaters occasionally sending henchmen to mess around with the Miniplex, and there's also there's at one point there's a smallpox outbreak
out of nowhere.
Yeah. One of the characters is the protagonist's long lost grandfather who has several mental health issues like dementia and other stuff. So it's it's a janitor. So, they Gabriel and some of the other staff have to keep him in check.
How old is this theater?
It was in operation for a while. It's the owners of the 2 movie theaters are divorced. They were married at one time. The Miniplex is the owner's daughter is the assistant manager at the Miniplex. And
they're unaware that there's all these creepy things happening. They just start happening out of nowhere.
Well, the staff they live life there. As far as working, they experience everything that kind of happens. There's a mechanic, there's a projectionist, there's a I mean, people are in box office, concessions. One of the characters isn't even named. It's just referred to as that guy.
That guy.
Yeah.
But wait a minute, this weird stuff keeps happening and they go home and come back every day?
Yeah.
Why?
Comedy, it's, you have episodic. So, it's kind of episodic storytelling, you have a plot, always, something's happening.
So where do we wind up here?
Well, he's having to substitute everything. So he gets trained through all the different jobs at positions at the theater, and kind of works his way up to assistant manager at the end. And it's all kind of, the setting kind of reflects that kind of room for growth in the same way. And as a large building, it could house 30 screens, but only about a half dozen of the 30 theaters are in operation at the beginning of the series. There's a shopkeeper that opens up shop in the store that's like a D-list superhero. And one point there, I think if I remember right, there was a riot. People were addicted to the artificial flavoring from the concession stand.
I love that. Does it eat their brain away?
Who knows?
Anyway, where do you go from here, Ryan?
I always intended it as a trilogy. I only finished the first one. The second one is partially outlined. I always saw it as source material for a sitcom. 3 seasons. That's kind of how I treat it. It's like every chapter is like an episode. I mean, I've had people that bought the books say that they'd like to see it as a movie, and I'm open to just different mediums of adaptation. But it's a comedy. It's a coming of age comedy.
You'd like to make it into a sitcom or a movie. How you telling people about it?
Simple word of mouth. I'm totally open to investing time and resources into marketing, but I'm more interested in just getting my manuscripts out there and just sales driving publication, basically, and distribution and marketing and everything.
You got an interesting concept here, Ryan.
Yeah. The sequel would introduce a third movie theater. It's like a classic drive-in. Just continue to expand the characters.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Ryan Knight, author of Stories of the Miniplex. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.